My dear brothers and sisters, the love and blessings of the Mother and Sri Aurobindo to all of you from Sri Aurobindo Ashram, Delhi branch. My name is Ramesh Bijlani, and I have with me a young budding psychologist, Asmita Bijlani, who is doing her master's in psychology at the Jamia University in New Delhi. The other day she told me that as a part of an assignment she has from the college, she is reading psychology as Sri Aurobindo saw it. To a disciple of Sri Aurobindo and the mother, this was music to my ears. And then I asked her if I could be of any help. She said she did have a few questions. So here she is to ask those questions. What's your first question, Asmita? Please go ahead.
Okay, first of all, I'm very glad for this opportunity. Of course, when somebody reads texts as vast as Sri Aurobindo's, a lot of questions come to mind. So the first thing that was a concern to me was that his texts can at times be very challenging and a little difficult to understand for somebody who's reading them for the first time. There are a lot of new terminologies, and he has used a lot of concepts and introduced a lot of new words. So, where and how does one start to explore and understand these texts fully?
Well, I mean, you have to make a beginning somewhere, and that you have already done. As you read more and more of him, you will find it easier. But having said that, his language can be challenging for a variety of reasons. Firstly, I mean, he was writing long back when the way good English was written was a little different from the way it is written today. He was writing about 100 years ago. Secondly, there are many terms in the Sanskrit language which cannot be translated very well into English. And he made up for it by sometimes coining his own terms. So that can be another difficulty. And the third probably difficulty arises from the fact that he was not always writing from the ordinary mental level. Of course, even at the mental level, he was an intellectual genius, and therefore he can be challenging. But very often he was writing from a level of consciousness higher than the mental, those regions of the consciousness which are not accessible to the mental. So all these things make it a little difficult, but as you read more and more of him, you'll find that it will be easier to understand. And not only it will be easier to understand, you will grow through that reading, both sort of in terms of the sharpness of your intellect and your consciousness, level of consciousness. And gradually you'll find that reading him is an intellectual feast on one side and a highway to heaven on the other. So that is why you find it difficult to understand him. If that was the major question, then maybe we can stop. Otherwise, if you have some other question, then we can take it up now.
Yeah, we can move on to the next one.
Okay, what's the next one? Which is related to psychology, perhaps, isn't it? The next one might be related to psychology.
Yeah, actually, the next one is directly related to what we have been studying in psychology. In India, we've seen that the curriculum and the books do take up Indian psychological thought and mention Sri Aurobindo as well. But while reading his works, I saw that he's often at odds with the positivist tradition that is dominant in psychology and in science. So, do you think that somewhere his thought and his theory can be incorporated into what we study in modern psychology, or is it something that one should explore separately and exclusively?
Yes, I think that's a good question. Firstly, I mean, Sri Aurobindo has been very original, and therefore he was not really thinking in terms of what the positivists might say. But the fact is that after having been at the level of only the intellect and making ego the central thing in psychology, it's good that modern psychology and modern thought started expanding, and this positivist psychology was a part of that expansion. But still, it remains relatively infantile or primitive as compared to the depths to which Sri Aurobindo went. And that is why you find that discrepancy. But then a synthesis is certainly possible. And what a synthesis is something which Sri Aurobindo has talked about in the synthesis of yoga. A synthesis is not just placing the two things side by side. It's not that you have one chapter on Indian psychology and one on positivist psychology. A synthesis, takes into account the central feature of both. There would be some central ideas which are common to both, and then add to that those particular aspects of each of these which would further add to the synthesis or make the synthesis richer. So that's how you get a single harmonious entity which is more powerful than either of the two entities that you have tried to synthesize. So that was his basic principle of synthesis, which he used for synthesizing the major traditional schools of yoga, and the same can be done also for psychology. Okay, Smita, it has been nice talking to you, and we'll meet again. I'm sure you'll have more questions to ask.
Sure, definitely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.